Hi everybody, welcome back or welcome to my channel. If you're new, my name is Zsuzsi, and in today's video we are going to discuss and we are going to review all the books I read in August. Now, August was a crazy reading month for me because in total I read 18 things. I don't want to say books because I read a couple of short stories and some of them are really short, like 20 pages, for example. But then I also read some books, some fantasy books that were insanely long, and I read the longest book that I've ever read in my life in August, and that was A Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. And this book is almost like 1,000 pages long, so crazy. But we have a lot of books, short stories and novellas to discuss, so let's just get right into it. First, I want to discuss all the new releases. Wait, this is not a new release. All the new releases that I read in August, and I want to start with Business or Pleasure by Rachel Lynn Solomon. I really like this author. I read her other two books, The Axe Talk, as well as what was the other one? The Weather Girl, and I really like those books. I like her romances. I think they are very fun and very light, and you know, there are times when that's all we need, right? And this was basically a beach read for me, and I did film a reading vlog on the beach while I'm reading this book. And if you want, you know, a very in-depth review and you want to know all my thoughts and all my feelings, I will leave that reading vlog down below in the description box. In this book we follow Chandler. She is our female main protagonist and she is a ghostwriter. In the beginning of the book she goes to a book signing that she wrote that book, but there is, like, you know, an official author attached to that book, and that author doesn't recognize her. This obviously doesn't make Chandler feel very good about herself because she's already at a stage in her life when she feels that she plays it too safe. So after this event she goes to a bar where she meets a stranger, and then she ends up having a one-night stand with this stranger because, again, she just, like, you know, she feels that she plays it safe all the time, so she wants to do something crazy. So she ends up having a one-night stand with this stranger, and it doesn't turn out to be the best experience of her life, but she doesn't say anything to the guy because she doesn't want to make him feel bad, and she thinks, oh well, I'm never gonna see you again in my life, so you know, what's the point? She just sneaks out the hotel room, and you know, for her it's done. And then the next day her manager contacts her, like, Chandler, I have a new job for you, can we meet for lunch? And then they do, and it turns out that this guy who was her one-night stand also turns out to be kind of like a famous actor, like not an A-list actor, but still like a famous actor, that he wants to write his memoir and he needs Chandler help, and they want to hire her, which they do, and then they begin working together. And then Chandler tells him that, look, you're not exactly good in bed. So the guy decides to ask for Chandler's help and asks Chandler to help him out in the bedroom and teach him a couple of things, and Chandler agrees. And that's how basically the story begins. I very much enjoyed the first half of the book because the communication between the characters, it was so funny. The banter between them was really funny in my opinion. Then, unfortunately, the second half of the book, it got very flat for me because there was a lot of miscommunication in this book. Chandler, unfortunately, is not really good at communicating, which is not a big problem, but she is also full of insecurities and she is not really good at telling other people in her life what she wants, and because of that she goes into all like these spirals in her head, and that was not very enjoyable for me, to be honest. I think that's where I kind of lost this book, but I finished this book in one day. It was fine. I enjoyed it. I think this is the book that I enjoyed the least from the author. I really liked Weather Girl. I think that's my number one, and then the second is Axe Talk, and then maybe this one is the last one. But if you just need, you know, a contemporary romance that is very light, then I think that you would enjoy this book. There is also talk about mental health in this book, specifically anxiety, and that is something that the author does. She does talk about mental health and the importance of therapy, I think, in every single one of her books, and in this book this was no exception. So, you know, I'm just putting it out there that that is what you can expect. It's okay, I enjoyed it. It was fun, but also it was nothing special at the same time. It was a perfect beach read. It gave me what I wanted at the time. Ultimately, I recommend. It's just, you know, a contemporary romance. And then the next new release that I want to talk about is Thornhatch by T. Kingfisher, because this book was one of my most anticipated releases for 2023, if not the most anticipated release for 2023, because I love T. Kingfisher. I mean, I love her works, and especially the dark fairy tales that she writes about, because I think that that's what she's really good at, taking these fairy tales and then using her dark and twisted mind to tell us the story in a very unique way. And I also think that T. Kingfisher has a very, again, unique way to approach feminism, and I love it, and I loved this book. But before I say anything about the content or the story, can we just admire the cover for a second? It was the author herself who illustrated this book, and she designed not just the cover but also, like, you know, all the kind of like internal designs. And look how beautiful this book is, and even the chapter headers. There's a toad in there. Oh my god, it's just so beautifully done. This book is a really good quality book. This book, honestly, I could summarize it in one sentence, because this book is a dark retelling of Sleeping Beauty. And what a retelling this was. I did not see this coming. We meet Toadling. Toadling was very little when she was taken by the fairies, but she grew up very happy with her like fairy family in the warm waters of fairyland. And then once she's grown, the fairies ask her for a favor. She needs to go back to the human world and offer a blessing to a newborn child. And it all seems very simple, but something goes horribly wrong. And then centuries later, a knight shows up at a tower because he hears that there is a princess in the tower and there is a curse that needs to be broken. But Toadling will do anything to uphold this curse. This book is so much fun, and anybody who read Nettle and Bone from T. Kingfisher think they would very much enjoy this book, because it's kind of like similar, because again, it is a dark and twisted retelling of a fairy tale. The only thing I didn't like about this book is how short it is. Like, Nettle and Bone was not long either, but I think that this book could have benefited from being a little bit longer. Nonetheless, I enjoyed it. This is dark fairy tale retelling T. Kingfisher style. I know that she basically writes dark fantasy and she also writes horror. I've only read one horror book from her, and it was okay, but I tend to enjoy her fantasy a little bit more, and this was fantastic. I finished in one sitting. I didn't know what to expect, and there were like scenes that totally freaked me out. I cannot tell you why, because that would be a major spoiler, but whoa. This was so well done, and I highly recommend, and I cannot wait for a next T. Kingfisher fairy tale retelling, because it really works for me. The next new release that I read in August and I want to talk about is The Center by Ayesha. I'm sorry, it's a complicated name for me. Ayesha Manazir Siddiqui, and I'm so sorry if I'm butchering that name. This book was again an anticipated release for me, not just because of the premise, which I'm going to talk about in a second, but also because I think that this is the first book that I ever read from a Pakistani female author. So I was super intrigued and I pre-ordered this book. And also, look at that cover. I mean, can you see this cover and then not buy this book? So our female main character in this book is Anisa, and Anisa is from Pakistan, but she lives in London and she is a translator. But she doesn't really have the career that she desires because she wants to translate this, like, you know, art of literature, but she doesn't get those type of jobs, so she ends up translating like Bollywood movies. She's not exactly happy with her career. Then she goes to an event and then she meets Adam, who is also a translator and has the career that she desires. Anisa and Adam end up in a relationship, and then when Adam from one day to another, like within weeks, learns Urdu, but he speaks it beautifully, fluently, without accent, and Anisa starts suspecting that, okay, like how is this possible that you speak these languages so beautifully without accent? Like, tell me your secret. So Adam admits that he goes to this center whenever he wants to learn a new language, and this center is very elite, very prestigious, and it's a very unique establishment where you pay a lot of money and in like 10 days they teach you a language that you desire, and again you will speak it fluently, you will speak it without accent. So Anisa decides that she wants to check out this center, and soon she realizes that there is a hidden cost and there are very disturbing things happening at this center. Now, here's the thing. I have very mixed feelings about this book because I cannot say that I liked it, because I didn't. I found it very boring actually, but I also cannot say that I hated it, because I didn't. There were discussions about topics that I am really interested in. You know, there were discussions about immigration, about learning a second language, you know, fluently and speaking it without an accent, or translations. I am really interested in translation. I think it's an art and it's a beautiful form of art. So many discussions about feminism, so many things, racism, and so that is just so interesting. But still, for some reason, this book just didn't work for me. I think that because there are so many topics discussed in this book, I felt that we didn't really focus on anything. Everything was kind of like just all over the place. The first half was very interesting, and I thought that in the second half the book would actually pick up, and then when we come to the conclusion, that would be like a mind-blowing moment. But unfortunately, that's not what happened. In the second half, that's when I basically kind of lost interest in this book. I don't know, maybe because I anticipated this book, and maybe because I wanted to love this book so much, I just expected too much and I did a disservice to this book. I don't know, but ultimately I found it really boring and I didn't get the experience that I wanted to get from this book. And the next up is Shokus Smile by Cho Uyong. I am so sorry if I'm butchering this name. I don't want to. This was the book, or I should say like a short story or novella collection that I selected to be my Women in Translation month pick. Now, I do want to add a little bit of a disclaimer here, because yes, August is Women in Translation month and it is kind of like an awareness month, and I, you know, try to do my best to read translated work, especially from female authors, throughout the year, and I think I do that. I actually really love South Korean literature. I don't know why, I just tend to really love it. So I do try to contribute as much as I can to support foreign female authors who do not write originally in English. And it's not something that I only do in August, but again, since it's an awareness month, I decided to specifically read this book for Women in Translation Month. And what a fantastic book this was. This book is a collection of 7 stories, and all of these stories center around South Korean, and one character is Japanese, women who just try to navigate their relationships with men, relationships with each other, with their families, with their friends, around trauma and grief and suffering and injustice. I am not going to talk about the individual stories because they are kind of short and I don't want to spoil these stories for you. All I'm gonna say is that these stories are so incredibly human. I adored the writing of this author, and the last 2 stories, they made me tear up. I was like, oh my god, this is impossible. Like, the author did such a good job, and I highly recommend this story collection. Beautifully done. This month I filmed a video, my quick reads video that I will link down below, and this video was all about short stories and novellas and very short books that you can basically finish in one sitting. And this book recommendation video, it reminded me of 2 sci-fi reads that I love, but for some reason I forgot about them. So I decided to reread them this month, and one of them is Emergency Skin by N.K. Jemisin. This is an amazing sci-fi short story. It is part of the Forward collection that is available if you have Audible membership for free. Now, this short story is about an explorer who returns to a climate-ravaged Earth that his ancestors, who were among the planet's finest, they left centuries ago. But he needs to get this vital material, specifically HeLa cells. So he comes back to Earth, and his mission is super easy. Get in, get the HeLa cells, and then get out. Like, that's all that you have to do, nothing else. This mission doesn't go as expected. So this is all I want to say, because again, this is a short story and I don't want to spoil it, but this is fantastic. Please read it if you can. The other short story that I want to recommend from the Forward collection is Arc by Veronica Roth. This is also an amazing, 20 pages long short story. So if you can find it for free, please read it. You will not regret it. So in this short story, Earth is about to be destroyed in about 2 weeks' time, and Samantha, who is a scientist, she is cataloging, with many other scientists, plant samples that the survivors will take with themselves to space. Basically, that's all that you need to know about this short story, going into this short story. Look, I recommend every single short story from this Forward collection if you can, again, get your hands on it. But Emergency Skin and Arc, so good. I highly recommend them. And next, we need to talk about Sarah J. Maas and the Throne of Glass series that I finished this month. I started the series in June, I believe. Yeah, and I finished it in August. I read 4 books this month: Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, and Heir of Fire. I finished that in July, I think. Yeah, and then the other 4 main novels in the series I finished in August, and I also finished 5 novellas that are basically bound into this edition. Now, whoa, what to say? So first, if you watch my July wrap up, then you'll see that I didn't really like the very first novel, Throne of Glass, and I didn't really like Crown of Midnight. The second half of Crown of Midnight, that was okay. And then I think that this series really picks up at Heir of Fire. Now, I loved Queen of Shadow. I really did love it, but I adored the last three novels in the book, Empire of Storm and Tower of Dawn, and the last book, Kingdom of Ash, which was like freaking 1,000 pages. I loved these books.
I loved it.
Reading this book series, it was a ride, and I decided to make a reading vlog, and I am editing that reading vlog, but I have about a 6 hours long footage that I seriously need to cut down, because obviously I am not going to upload that. So it is coming. I am working on it. So this book series is about Selena Sodothian, who is an assassin, and in the first book she is kept as a slave in a salt mine until a prince and a guard of the prince kind of like release her from this salt mine, because they want her to become the king's champion in a championship that's coming up, and whoever wins this championship will become the king's personal assassin, and then after killing and dispatching the king's enemy for like a couple of years, she can get her freedom back. To simplify this series, basically that's all that I can say, and obviously without spoiling anything. But honestly, sometimes I feel that I am the lost chick on the internet who hasn't read the Throne of Glass series, so I don't think that I can spoil a lot of things for people, but I also don't want to say too much. If you like Sarah J. Maas, then I think that obviously you will like the Throne of Glass series. And I just cannot believe that I read the longest book that I've ever read in my life this month. This is like, you know, like a personal record for me, so yay! And that's all I want to say about the Throne of Glass series. Stay tuned for the reading vlog that I am working on if you want to know more about my feelings and about my thoughts, because reading this series, it was a ride. It was a ride. Okay, and now the last set of books that I kinda want to talk about is A Master of Jinn Universe by P. Djili Clark, right? Am I saying that correctly? Yeah, I think so. This kind of like fantasy world, or this universe, it's got 4 published works, and I've already read 3 of them this month. There are 2 short stories and 1 kind of like very short book, more like a novel. These are trying to establish the magic system, and these are leading up to the full-length novel that I didn't get the chance to read in August. The 2 short stories are available for free from Tor.com. I think it was Tor, yeah, who published these books. The first one is A Dead Jinn in Cairo, and then the second one is The Angel of The Angel of Khan el Khalili. I apologize if I'm butchering that. And then the third book, The Haunting of Tramcar 13. This was like traditionally published in like a novella format. I was keen to read these 3 shorter books before getting to the novella, because these are the books that are establishing the magic system. And this is a historical fantasy. This is super intriguing to me. Everything takes place in 1912, I believe, in Cairo, Egypt. I like the writing. and I think I like the magic system and I like the world, and I cannot wait to get to the full-length novel. Out of these 3 works that I read, I cannot really say too much about the short stories because again, those are short stories and I don't want to spoil anything. And even with this short little book, I don't want to say too much. All I want to say though is that the title is a little bit misleading because I expected that this would be like a fantasy thriller or maybe fantasy horror. Because of the haunting, I thought that there would be like ghosts involved or something like that. And no, this book was basically about a feminist movement in Egypt. Very interesting to me, so I very much enjoyed. It's just not what I expected from this book. Just like I said, I like the world, I like the magic system, and I like the writing. So soon I will try to get to the full-length novel, which is A Master of Jinn, I think. This is it, guys. This is the end of the video. These are all the books that I finished in August, and I think that I had a pretty good reading month. I didn't find anything that's, you know, like an all-time favorite or a book that like changed me in my core, but I enjoyed some of these books very much, and I hope that you had a fantastic reading month as well in August, and that you had a really good last month of summer. Well, I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you enjoyed spending some time with me. If you want to check out any of my other videos, then I will link them here, and I see you soon in an upcoming video. Bye!